Hello, it is early in the morning on November 6th. Last night was election night and there were 10 states that had abortion on their ballots. I started to make a video last night anticipating that the pro-life side was going to either lose all 10 states or lose everything except for maybe Florida. I'm glad I didn't bother to edit that video because I woke up this morning and things had gone much better than anticipated. Quick background for me, in my pro-life activism, I just always assume we're going to lose. And then if we do lose, I expected it, and if we do better than I thought, I am shocked and surprised. I understand that philosophy is not helpful to everyone. Some people really need a lot more hope than that to bother to do the work. I get that, but I find it liberating. I expect that we're going to lose, and I'm committed to fight either way. Recently, a close friend of mine who's also a pro-life activist was rereading 1984, and he saw a quote that he said just leapt off the page at him, reminding him of my general outlook on these things. It says, "You will have to get used to living without results and without hope. You will work for a while, you will be caught, you will confess, and then you will die. Those are the only results that you will ever see. There is no possibility that any perceptible change will happen within our own lifetime. We are the dead. Our only true life is in the future, and we shall take part of it as handfuls of dust and splinters of bone. But how far away that future may be, there is no knowing. It might be 1,000 years. At present, nothing is possible except to extend the area of sanity little by little." I do love that quote. And I do, again, find it liberating to expect things to be really difficult and commit anyway. But to be clear, I don't think the pro-life movement is in nearly as bad a shape as that quote sounds. In 1984, they say there is no possibility of any perceptible change. We see change all the time. And with that, I want to talk to you about what happened last night. So there were 10 states that had ballot initiatives on abortion. 5 of them I would definitely consider pro-choice states. They either already allowed abortion until about 24 weeks, about viability, or they had no gestational limits on abortion anyway. Another 4 of them I would call pro-life states. They had limits at conception or at 6 weeks. Arizona had a lower limit and recently allowed it to go to 15 weeks, but before that it was lower, and they expanded it partly in the hopes of fighting off this ballot initiative. And then there was one state that I would consider kind of in between, Nebraska. They had a limit at 12 weeks. Again, for context, I thought we were going to lose everywhere. We lost all the pro-choice states, which is a bummer, but honestly not surprising. It doesn't make a huge change. I mean, 2 of them were Colorado and Maryland. They don't even have limits on abortion anyway. And then they decided to extra double plus be pro-choice by adding in that it's a constitutional right. Colorado has one of the clinics that does abortions after viability for no medical reason, and they've been that way for years. They had no gestational limits on abortion even while Roe v. Wade was still in place. And don't get me wrong, that's horrible and terrible, and we would like to find a way to change that, but their practice isn't going to change a lot from last week. So we lost all 5 of the pro-choice states. Yeah, expected. The ones that really hurt are Arizona and Missouri. We lost both of those. Arizona at the time had a limit at 15 weeks, which I would consider in between, but before that they had something stronger. And Missouri was limited to basically conception. And so we lost those protections, and now they're running in the other direction, and that is difficult. As is often the case, we were dramatically outspent. Across all 10 states, cumulatively, the pro-life side spent about $25 million, and the pro-choice side spent $214 million. And in Arizona, it was less than $1 million for the pro-life side to almost $32 million for pro-choice. In Missouri, it was about $1.3 million for the pro-life side to almost $29 million for pro-choice. And none of that even gets into the free advertising the pro-choice side benefits from when they have major media outlets publishing stories claiming horrible harm from abortion bans, despite the stories making no sense at all. It's funny because the narrative from the other side is that we are losing most of the abortion ballot initiatives, not all of them anymore, but most of them, because this is the will of the people and Americans support abortion. But they sure spend a fortune to convince Americans to vote the way they're claiming Americans wanted to vote anyway. All that said, here's the good news. First of all, we won in Florida. Florida is the only state that requires 60% to get the ballot initiative to pass, and they didn't make that threshold. They spent $117 million in Florida, which means about half of all the money they spent across all 10 states, it was in Florida. It means they spent over $100 million more than we did in Florida, and they still lost. Because Florida has the 60% threshold, there was some anticipation that that might be the one ballot initiative that we won, and we found out we won it pretty early last night, and that was good news. But to my delight, I wake up this morning and find out that we also won in South Dakota and in Nebraska. South Dakota has what the other side calls a near total ban, meaning that they protect prenatal lives from conception onward, and they still have that this morning. Nebraska was interesting because they were restricting abortion at 12 weeks, and the voters in Nebraska were allowed to choose between whether they'd want to restrict at 12 weeks or at 24, and they said 12. Looking at the money one more time, South Dakota and Nebraska are the only states where the pro-life side spent more than the pro-choice side. Now, in other states, the pro-choice side outspends us 10, 20, 30 times as much. We did not do that in these states. We just slightly spent more than them. So in Nebraska, the pro-life side spent, about 11 million to the pro-choice side's 10 million. So it's about even. And in South Dakota, the pro-life side spent about not quite 900,000 to the pro-choice side's about 500,000. In other words, I went into this thinking we'd lose all 10 initiatives. We lost all 5 of the pro-choice ones, no big shock. We kept the in-between one, Nebraska at 12 weeks, and we won 2 of the 4 pro-life ones. Is that enough? No, it's not enough. I want to win every single one. I want to have pro-life laws protecting children in utero in every single state. But it's a move in the right direction compared to where I thought we were going to go for sure. People get really amped at election time, and I think it's important to vote, and I think it's important to participate. But keep in mind that the American abortion debate, and probably the international abortion debate, this is a long haul fight. Don't get too wound up about any single election, because we can win and that'd be awesome, but if we lose, it's not going to stop me. For those of you who worked so hard in Arizona and Missouri and in the pro-choice states trying to stem the tide of this abortion extremism, first of all, thank you. Second of all, whenever you feel overwhelmed, like you've put so much out there and there's so much you can't control, refocus on what you can control. I can't raise $214 million to try to fight against abortion in every state, but the flip side is you can't make me shut up. There are lots of ways to do pro-life work. We have volunteers help us in little and small ways all the time. But even if you're not with a specific organization or something like that, you can always speak up. When you are inevitably in social situations where somebody starts mouthing off about abortion, assuming everyone in the room is of course pro-choice, just memorize this sentence. I don't really want to argue about this, but for the record, I do not agree with you. There are tens of millions of Americans who oppose abortion. Yes, including after Dobbs. And if each of us at least speak it out loud, there's a lot of power in that. And remember that when you cannot defeat our political opposition, you still have the power to make it very difficult for them. Again, this is a long-term fight, and there are always going to be pro-lifers who are prepared to do this for life, and that's the reason the other side is never going to get to rest, and they're never going to get to be complacent. Because I'm never going to let this go. Do you know why? Because my children were valuable before they were born. The children I miscarried, they were valuable even though they were never born. And the thing is, it's not just my children. It's all children. Abortion kills humans. It's a human rights violation. And we're not going to stop talking about it.